So what is going on here? Well, you've probably all seen this Google Gemini AI image generation system, and the results are it doesn't want to create images of white people. And even when giving factual feedback on questions, it apparently is leaving information out, giving biased information, which is not surprising because Google's search engine does that already. If you didn't know this, if you're still using Google, stop, because it curates its views. It gives biased information, political bias. And you know, if that's what you want, if you want to be like, hey, yeah, I want all my information coming with a bias towards far left ideology, woke ideology, then yeah, keep using Google. It's fine. But I avoid it. Now, I wasn't going to say anything about this because I figure like it's already been said. What can you say about this? People have already covered it. There's not really much else that I can say that, but I realized I do have a lot to say. Now, these three quotes that I put up on the screen in the beginning, if you're watching, I'm sorry, they're pretty good quotes, but they were by the head of this project. His name is Jack Krawczyk, and I don't like this guy because he is an idiot. Now, before we get started, and I tell you why I don't like Jack Krawczyk, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. Make sure that you're still subscribed because YouTube does unsubscribe people every single day. You can find me on Rumble, BitChute, on Twitter, X. Thank you all for stopping by. I do appreciate everybody coming by and supporting my channel and my work. Now, one of the quotes, if you weren't looking at the screen, I'll read one of them to you. One of the quotes from this Jack Krawczyk person is, "This is America, where racism is the #1 value our populace seeks to uphold." Well, if that's the case, Jack, you are the head of a project at Google, of this AI Google thing, and you're a white male.
You're fucking a white male!
Are you also straight? Probably. So why don't you do the right thing then? Uphold your values, your belief system, and find a protege that is, I'm going to say, let's see, half black, half Latina, because it's got to be a female, right? Half Latina, is no taller than 5'4", because let's face it, the reality is height matters to the American populace. And I'm going to say she's got to be, I'll say plump. I don't know. How do you talk about being overweight now? Because they've proven it to us. They have proven that you are healthy at any size and you are beautiful at any size. So we can't say overweight anymore. There's no such thing, right? You can't be overweight because health and beauty don't drop off as you gain more fat. So, I mean, plump, I guess, is the right word to say. I don't know what else to... and you can't say like bigger than regular sized, because what is regular sized? Does that mean what a person's size is supposed to be or what the average is? And, you know, that's going to vary based on the part of the world that you live in. I mean, people in the United States tend to have more fat on their bodies than people in other countries. That's just how it is. So, yeah, I don't know how you talk about, like, maybe call them obese. I don't know if YouTube will allow me to say that word, though. I'm not sure. Because obese, you know, it's the clinical term. It doesn't really mean, like, anything other than you're carrying too much weight, you're carrying too much fat. So, yeah, so this protege of Jack Krawczyk's has to be half black, half Hispanic, female, who is no taller than 5'4", and is plump, we'll just say, and is plump. I think that would qualify. And, you know, it would not take long to get her up to speed. It would not take her long at all to get up to speed because, I mean, all you got to do is say, oh yeah, whitey bad, whitey bad, men bad, repeatedly, over and over and over again. And if she doesn't pick it up, you know, I mean, what would that take, a week? No, it wouldn't take a week. Come on. Maybe a day at the most to get that concept in her brain. And then, you know, you could step aside and actually live your values, Jack Krawczyk. You could actually live those values that you espouse. You piece of garbage. You. So what about these images that Gemini AI is producing? You know, we got black knights, female. There were some female knights in medieval Europe. There were some, but it was rare. It was the exception. But black knights. And I want to talk about this too, as a thing that has popped up on my radar. Black death more likely to kill minorities. I want to talk about this article, but I mean it's pretty short. And what else can I say about it? It's garbage. It's full of crap. It says 17 Africans, 7 Asians, and 121 whites. So based on these numbers, 1350 Europe was more diverse than it is today. Pretty impressive. Were there black and brown people in Europe in the Middle Ages? Yeah, there probably was. There are a few, 1 or 2 here and there. This article is clearly exaggerating the numbers. I don't know where they're getting this information from. It's probably all just made up. I don't know. I've not done the research on this, but would you, as a European 1,000 years ago, known about black people, known about brown people? No. Would you have ever seen one? No. The vast majority of the people you saw at that time period in Europe were white. And they didn't have television to tell you otherwise. They didn't have internet to tell you otherwise. They didn't even have books. I mean, there were some books, right? But there was no printing press, so the books were not mass produced. Literature was not mass produced. And the images in the books were illuminations. They were painted on the page by the author typically. And they depicted the people that you saw around you because you didn't travel. Most people in medieval Europe traveled no more than 10 miles from the place they were born in their entire life. Could you imagine that? If you're watching this video, you're probably living in the Western world and you're like, dude, I can just hop in my car and drive 10 miles away in 5 minutes. That's pretty amazing. There are a lot of misconceptions. Now, could people go out and read, like the peasantry, could they go out and read these books and maybe read a book that said, oh, there were people that have darker skin that look different from us? Well, most peasants were what we would consider illiterate today. They weren't truly illiterate. They could read a little bit, maybe. I was watching a documentary about this a few years ago. They were discovering that a lot of peasants could actually read a little bit. They weren't, I guess you would say, fully literate in their language. Maybe a better way to describe it is they weren't fluent in their written language. That might be a better way of saying it. They were not even semi-fluent. They just knew a few words, right? A few phrases and such, and could pick out some letters and go, I know how to pronounce this letter and that letter, and kind of parse some things together, maybe find their name, their family name in a book. But yeah, they weren't literate by our standard, but they didn't have to be literate. There was, like I said, there was no printing press. There was not mass production of the written word. So they didn't exchange information in that manner. Like today, I don't know. I hear these stories about people who are illiterate living in the modern world. Like, how do you get along? Like, I'm receiving notices from the DMV going, hey, we have a problem here, and I got to deal with that. Otherwise, I'm going to get fined. You know, I could get all sorts of different things. Summons, I got a jury summons here. Got to deal with that, or else, you know, there's problems that could come up, right? So literacy is important to us, but it wasn't important 1,000 years ago in probably the entire world because, again, there wasn't mass production of these things. And to sit here and say that Europe was like it is today, only they just had no electricity and no running water, or very little running water. Yeah, don't be stupid. Black people did not exist in large numbers in medieval Europe. And that's what these woke keep pushing on us, that they want to rewrite the history of the world and how things actually were. You know, a good way to not be affected by the Black Death would have been to stay out of Europe, because it affected Europe and Asia more than anywhere else in the world. And the fact of the matter is Google's Gemini AI thing is putting Native Americans, it's depicting Native Americans as ancient Europeans. Saying, oh yeah, well, you know, show me a picture of a Viking. Oh, and then there's freaking Black Vikings. There's Native American Vikings. I can guarantee you that no Latin people set foot in Europe until Columbus came back from Europe. That's just how it is. And those were Native Americans, actually. They didn't have the mix of Spanish yet. Right. Maybe, I guess, possibly the Vikings brought back some Native Americans when they visited what is now Canada. I don't think that they did. Maybe they did. I never heard any of that sort of thing happening from them. But we all know this is a joke, that this Gemini AI, it's prejudiced, it's racist, it's anti-white. We can see that clearly. It's also anti-male. You'd be like, well, what are you talking about anti-male? Maybe you didn't catch that part where the knights were Black women, where the founding fathers were Black women, where the popes were Black women. I don't think there's ever been a female pope, right? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but Catholicism is all about women are nuns, men get into the priesthood. No female popes, no, very few female knights, very few female warriors at all in medieval Europe. And we all know why, but I will clarify for you in case you're wondering, and that is that women are smaller than men and therefore cannot impart as much damage when they are in hand-to-hand combat or armed combat, melee combat, however you want to call it. A gun, of course, delivers the same amount of force, whether it's shot by a man or a woman, doesn't really matter. But a sword does not deliver the same amount of force based on the size of the person. Now, I know the apologetics on this sort of thing might be, well, look, the skin color of the person doesn't matter. We've said this. It's the content of the character, not the color of their skin. We all know that ancient Europeans were white, almost entirely white, right? And so just because it's showing us pictures of these people who are not white to represent ancient Europeans or the founding fathers or whatever, we all know that that's superficial stuff that doesn't matter. But what if you're writing a paper about the founding fathers or about ancient Rome or about the development of the Catholic Church, and you have to have images in your paper, and you decide to generate some on this thing? It's going to give you inaccurate, misleading imagery, and you don't know who this is going to be going to. People are naive. People believe all sorts of things about ancient Europe that is not true. Plague masks. Plague masks were worn during the Black Death, the bubonic plague. We don't even know if the Black Death and the bubonic plague were the same thing, actually. There's some differences there. Did you know that? I bet you didn't know that. No, the plague masks were not developed for the Black Death. They were developed later on. What about chastity belts? Those were commonplace in medieval Europe, right? Nope. They're a novelty idea that came about in I want to say late 1400s to falsely depict how things were in the Middle Ages. Oh, the Earth was flat. Most people thought the Earth was flat in medieval Europe. Nope. Most people thought the Earth was a sphere or rounded, a dome. There's probably a greater percentage of the population today that believes the Earth is flat than there was in medieval Europe. That's just how it is. So people have all sorts of misconceptions about the past, things that I know because I have a passion for medieval fantasy and I want to know how things work. If you want to know more about writing like kind of more realistic sorts of gritty fantasy, medieval fantasy, check out my book. It's down in the description. You can pick up a copy of it. It's not for kids, so don't give it to your 12-year-old and be like, here you go, son. No, you be like, 16 or so before you're picking it up. But otherwise, yeah, it's a compelling story. But the point is, we don't want to get these misconceptions out there because there already are misconceptions that we think about things when we're dealing with the past and how it worked. And I am a very limited point of view on how the past actually was. And I just dropped some facts on you from my limited point of view. So how much more limited is this information going to be? How much more limited is our understanding of history going to be if we start showing inaccurate imagery of what was happening in those times? It's just going to compound this problem where we don't know what the past was really like and we're doomed to repeat it, or we are doomed to have misconceptions about it that could lead to potential problems. I mean, obviously, knowing that a plague mask was actually developed later on in human history than the Black Death is no big deal. Who really cares? It's not a big deal. It's not gonna I don't think it's gonna change the world in any way. And also, did you know that regarding the Black Death, that caused such social and economic upheaval that's what led to the Renaissance. Without the Black Death, there would have been no Renaissance. At least it would have happened later, right? So these are all things that you pick up by studying history, studying anthropology, studying these time periods. And if you're going to be going to some sort of search engine that is going to be inaccurate, is going to lie to you, I mean, what else is it lying about? Like I said, Google lies. It curates its information. I've caught it lying more than once. I've even called out websites on their misinformation, and they've had to go in and change it. So yeah, this is BS, and we all know it's an agenda. It's all propaganda. But people want to argue with me that I'm the one who's wrong, that I'm an idiot, that I don't know what woke is, that all these other things. Do your own research and tell me I'm wrong. I mean, seriously, sit down and do your research. Don't sideline the issues I'm talking about. There are lots of issues in the world that I could talk about, but I talk about woke stuff. If it isn't woke, don't even bother bringing it to me. I don't even care. I do care, actually, but I'm not going to bring it up on my channel. Or if I do, it's just going to be like a mention of it, and then we're going to move on. Because believe me, there's plenty of things that I am passionate about that I would love to talk about on this channel that I don't, because it's not relevant to wokeness. So anyway, that's all I got for this time. Thank you so much for stopping by, and especially if you made it this far into the video. Now here's your palate cleanser.
What's in my coffee? Hey, what's in my coffee? Oh, your whole leg. Oh. Do you see the... Wow. Good morning.